Welcome to the FemiNinja Project. I am your host, Cheryl I Love, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the FemiNinja Project. Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And I am so excited and so fired up because I have a fantastic guest with me here today. His name is Mark Hardcastle, aka Captaininja. So Mark, welcome to the FemiNinja Project.
Oh my goodness, Cheryl, thank you so much for having me in. This is an exciting opportunity for me. I am so honored to be a guy on your podcast.
I know, and you're basically only the second guy that I've had on the podcast so far. And I love men, and everybody knows that. And I say it a lot on the podcast. I am just a huge fan of men, and I celebrate the many magnificent men in my life every single day. And I think there's way too much man bashing going on anyway. And
awesome. Well, I got to tell you, I'm feeling the love.
Are you feeling the love?
Yeah, I'm feeling the love. Thank you for that.
Even in the FemiNinja girl cave here?
The girl cave. You know, this is definitely a girl cave. I'm only a little bit out of my element here, but just only a little bit. It's a very welcoming environment. I'm feeling okay.
I mean, it's not too girly. I don't have any lace. I mean, I've got my weapons rack over there, and
there's that.
Yeah, and then the ballet slippers.
All of the martial arts gear over on that wall. You got all those belts. You got 173 belts.
I think you're exaggerating.
And you call those gis.
Yes.
Okay, so yes. I have to be careful there depending on which branch of martial arts. Sometimes there are other names.
Well, that's okay because we ninja are very forgiving.
Oh, okay.
Just don't cross the line too many times, then we're not.
Right. I will do my best not to cross the line today.
Okay, that's what the weapons rack is for.
Right.
So you really are a captain. You are a pilot.
Yes.
You are an author. You are a music aficionado.
Yes.
You are a motivational speaker. Okay. You're also a lot of other things. So I really want to dig in and let the audience know who Mark Hardcastle is. And you have a lot of incredible wisdom to share with us. And so I just want to get started.
Right. Fire away.
Fire away. The
this.
First thing I want to say is you do have a beautiful book that you wrote, and I've read it. I took notes and everything. And there are so many.
Compliment.
Oh, you're welcome. You very well deserved. The book has won many awards and a beautiful, really high honor with SEPA. So that's just fantastic. But out of all of the wonderful words of wisdom that you shared in your book, one of the things that really resonated with me was, sometimes you're the windshield, and sometimes you're the bug.
I think there's a country song with that line.
Really?
Yeah. I can't take credit for having come up with that line myself, but it really does describe how life works. I mean, it just does. Life throws us challenges, and it's really all in the flying world. We talk about how it's all about the recovery. There's never a perfect flight. Things go wrong, and it's all about the recovery. Life's the same way. And it's like you say, the book is called The Symphony of Your Life, Restoring Harmony When Your World Goes Out of Tune. Your life just does go out of tune sometimes, and those are bug days. Those are not windshield days. And you have the opportunity at that point to decide what you're going to do about it. How are you going to respond when fortune challenges you with, being the bug?
And you do talk about fortune a lot in the book, and the way you explain it with the yin and the yang, and there are a couple of other ways that it was just so expressive and so meaningful.
Oh, thanks. That's an attempt to describe the duality of our existence. And it's like we were just talking about. Sometimes you're windshield, sometimes you're the bug. Sometimes good stuff happens, sometimes bad stuff happens. And so that's where the yin and yang thing really is meaningful to me. And you'll see images of that throughout the book. And in fact, there's an image of it on the front cover. Many people don't see that. It's kind of recessed there, and it's subtle, intentionally.
See it now, but I didn't.
Did you not see it before?
No, I had not seen it before.
Right, and that's intentional. It's back in the background. because it's foundational, but I don't want it to be overpowering. I want people to come to the realization of how important this duality of our existence really is. So that's where the Wheel of Fortune metaphor comes in, and I talked about that early in the book.
One thing, with the good times, bad times, the high times and the low times of life, we had a saying in martial arts: you can't have the light without the darkness.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
that's good. Can I use that?
Oh, you can use that. Yeah, I spent 14 years and spent a lot of money to learn that. Yeah, but it is, and that's what life is all about. And I think sometimes we feel like we have to control every aspect of our life, or when things start going south, we feel like we've got to control it and grab it. But sometimes you just have to go with the flow.
Boy, yeah,
hit that low note.
Needing that much control is just a recipe for a hard life. It's not going to be that way. It just isn't. It's much better, in my opinion, and based on my 60 years worth of stories that I've paid for with my life. Those stories all tell me that bad stuff's going to happen. Might as well just roll with it and decide how you're going to respond. Are you going to crumble? Are you going to react? Or are you going to thoughtfully respond? Viktor Frankl is credited with a saying, and the folks at the Frankl Institute deny that he ever said this, but we can't trace it down. But whoever said it said that there is a space between stimulus and response.
Oh, okay.
And it's in that space that we have the opportunity to decide how we are going to craft the response. So many people who are not, the common vernacular is woke.
Yes.
If they're not aware of that reality, stuff happens and then they just react, and it's like being in a pinball machine, being the pinball. But it's much better to pause for however long it takes to recognize what just happened, and then craft an intentional response. Life's just much better when we develop that skill. And that's one of the themes in the book. It's one of the patterns that I recognized, when some of these things happened to me. And again, we are recognizing in our space, the leadership space, that life, we can choose the perspective of life happens to us, or we can choose the perspective that life happens for us.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that's something you actually learned at a very young age, or you figured it out for yourself at a young age. And there's a story in the book about trying out for the drum major position in the high school marching band. And you didn't get it, even though you knew there were 4 people or 4 guys who were competing for it, and you knew you had done a really killer audition.
It's mine. How is this,
You just knew you had it.
All I got to do is wait for them to hand it to me. I won.
You felt that baton in your hand. You saw yourself marching down that field.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And then you didn't get it.
Crazy. Yeah.
And I mean, that was a major disappointment.
It was. And that was an early on opportunity for me to decide, okay, what am I going to do with this? And I don't know what it was in my life that had prepared me for that decision point per se, but I had the opportunity to decide, okay, am I going to give up on this idea of conducting in any form, being a musical conductor in any form, because this was a major defeat for me. Was I just going to walk away from it, or was I going to choose to respond differently and find another way? And oh my goodness, I am so thankful that I chose to find another way at that point in my life. And I was just a kid. The real payoff didn't come for decades. But yeah, there was a payoff.
Oh, I know. You're going to tell us a little bit more about the payoff.
Okay.
But I think that, this wasn't something that you just wanted to do. I mean, it wasn't like a goal, because this really truly was your passion.
Right. Music is in my blood. I come by it honestly. My mom started me on piano lessons. I wasn't even tall enough to reach the keyboard.
Wow.
And I was a singer probably from the time I could talk.
Well, you do have a very melodious voice.
Well, you're very kind. Thank you for that.
No, I am not known for my kindness. But
You're known for your elbows. Yeah,
and
right.
my honesty.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for that.
Yes.
One of the reasons that she did that for us, and by the way, I didn't have the piano playing gene in me. She exposed me to piano, and thank goodness for that, because I understand the keyboard and I understand music better because I understand the keyboard. But I wasn't a concert pianist. That was my I was number 2 of 5, and the concert pianist in our family was number 4. She got all of it. And bless her, she's magnificent.
Wow.
Wasn't me. But I did start music study early. My mom was also, she was not a professional level musician, but both of her parents were.
Oh, wow.
So that's where it comes from. My grandparents, my grandmother was a concert pianist. My grandfather was a jazz band leader. He was like a Duke Ellington kind of guy. Had his own jazz band and all that. And then the Great Recession hit, and you couldn't make any money doing that.
Right.
Not the Great Recession, that was the Great Depression that time.
Yeah.
I've said Great Recession so many times in my own life now. But they got into the Depression. They couldn't make any money doing that. So they both became school teachers and taught music.
Okay.
And my mom then went on, as obviously as their progeny, learned music that way. And my mom had great head understanding of music. She had a great ear. Has. She's still with us. I'm talking in terms of my own childhood,
well,
thinking
you're talking
back to
in
the
the
past. Yeah, I'm talking to the past back then.
No, I understand.
So that's where it came from. That's where my love of music came from. And starting in my early teens was when I started conducting the youth choir at church and thought it was just really cool. And this one thing led to another. I did a little bit in high school and then a little bit in college and on from there.
So what was the big payoff that you received from being able to say, I'm not going to give up on this, even though I missed this really wonderful opportunity that I wanted with all my heart and soul and every fiber of my being, but okay, I'm just going to pick myself up, I'm going to keep on going and just not take my eyes off of the baton.
Right. So the first big payoff, and there were really two, and I talk about both of them in the book. The first one was when I was living in Omaha, and I was singing in the Nebraska Choral Arts Society, and singing in my church choir, Westside Baptist Church. And that fall, that church always had a big musical production for Christmas. The pastor was a published author and dramatist, and he had written a Christmas production.
Oh, wow.
And so the church musician had gathered music for that and turned it into a Christmas musical production.
So he was a professional. He wasn't just doing this on the side as a volunteer.
Right. Well, that guy got fired.
Okay.
That fall. And the guy that came in to save the production was my conductor at the Nebraska Choral Arts Society. He happened to attend that church. So he became the interim church musician, while the pastor who had written this production began the search for a full-time follow-on to the other guy. So fast forward to, we're ready to perform. We've been through all the rehearsals, and it's dress rehearsal night. And word filtered into the choir that our conductor had gotten himself into a bind. He was scheduled for 2 concerts that Friday night. One at his university. Yeah, he was. I knew him through Nebraska Choral Arts Society, but he was the music department chair at University of Nebraska in Omaha. And so he had a Friday night concert there and a Friday night concert at the church. And he needed somebody to step in. And long story short, as soon as I heard that, I came off the risers, went around behind him, and watched the last part of the rehearsal. And when it was over, I said, "Hey, Randall, I can do this." And he was like, "Have you ever done this before? I mean, we're going to have professional orchestra here, 30 pieces in the orchestra. We got 75, 80 people in the choir. We got all this drama going on. It's a pretty big deal."
Yeah, this wasn't a small thing.
"No, Randall, I've never done this before, but I can do it. I got this." He said, No. He says, "It's so late. I'm going to ask some of my professional colleagues. I'm embarrassed to ask them, but they're professional. They can step into this. They can do it." I said, "Randall, I got this." So he thought about it for a second, kind of looked into my eyes, said, "I tell you what, here's a baton." Now, the rehearsal's over. Everybody's gone. There are two people in the sanctuary. There's me and Randall.
Oh, my.
And right in front of me is the orchestra pit. Nobody in it. Choir loft. Nobody there. But he says, there is your orchestra. There's your choir. Here's a piece of music. Start them off. And I took the baton, looked at the music, beat out 4 measures, cued in the ghost choir, and he stopped me. He said, "All right, you know what, Mark? You're right. You can do this. Be in my office at noon tomorrow, and I'll talk you through the scores." Next thing I knew, there I was in his office at the university. He had these orchestral scores.
Jeez.
Now, orchestral scores are not like choir scores. There on every page, there's maybe four measures of music with 10 or 12 lines of music for all the different instruments. So
have you read any of those prior
I had
to that?
seen those before. Well, the good news was I knew the music from having been in the choir. So I was able to take that knowledge and follow along in the scores to the point that he made some notes in there, and he said things like, "Well, and right here, there's nothing in the music, but I've made this little agreement with the orchestra. They're going to do this." And so he talked me through all of that. I took the scores home, studied them overnight. The next night we showed up for the first night of the concert, and I watched Randall from the choir as he did all of that stuff. And the following night was Friday night. It was the night of so the first half of the concert, perfectly normal. Second half, lights go down for a dramatic monologue there. I sneak out of the choir, go around to the back, walk down the aisle, sit down next to Randall. He hands me the baton. We shake hands, and lights come up, and I step up on the podium, and off we go. And oh my goodness, what a moment! I still am moved by that moment because I did what I came to do, and the choir didn't recognize me. I talk about this in the book. Randall he had a full beard and no contacts, no glasses, and white tie and tails, right? And my character for that night was a Victorian octet caroler. So I had pinstripe slacks, a black jacket, and I was still in the military. So military haircut, glasses, no beard, and who's this guy getting up on the podium there? And so I could feel the energy from me to the choir. The orchestra knew what was going on. They had been briefed.
But the choir didn't.
Choir had no idea.
Oh my God.
So I started the orchestra, and then I see all these question marks, up in the choir, and they're like, "Who is this guy?" And just as I cued them, they recognized me. I was like, "Mark, can you do this?" And boom, I brought them in right on cue, and the energy they released was powerful beyond description.
Wow.
And that was one of those great moments in my life, a highlight of my life that I will cherish till the day I die.
This is when I'm so disappointed that my audience can't see my face because my expression and stuff, this was just, what a moment. I mean, the whole story, even the story, the way it builds, and then you take the baton and you cue the choir, and it's just like, I hear cymbals even in my mind just going off like, boom.
So can I tell the second story?
Yes.
So
we can do anything we want.
So if it gets too long,
it's my girl case.
It is. If we're too long-winded, you just edit it out. But this is the second payoff. Many years later, that all happened in Omaha, Nebraska, when I was in the military.
Okay.
So years later, I was hired by the airline that brought me to Denver, and have lived here ever since. Now that was in 1991, and now we're in 2019. So 11 years ago. My third child, my second son, was in the Colorado Children's Chorale. And I by then I had been a chorale parent for 10 years. My daughter had been in the group. She was in it from second grade through the eighth grade. Then Seth was in it for a while. And this was his last year, his last concert. And for years I'd looked for an opportunity to be involved. And maybe, is there some way I can get in front of this choir?
The bed.
Well, this year they created an opportunity, and so I reached for it, received the opportunity, and next thing I knew, after a couple of weeks of preparation with the Children's Chorale, there I was on the stage in the Betcher Concert Hall
Wow.
to conduct the Colorado Children's Choir tour choir with my son
Oh.
on the stage.
Oh.
And what a moment.
I'm not even a parent, and this is giving me chills.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there I was. I conducted the piece. It came to an end. And I turned to the audience to take my bows. And the warmth of the stage lights. I probably was just the stage lights, but the warmth of the moment of having known, that I had just conducted my son.
Wow.
Another magical moment.
So there's one other thing I just wanted to highlight that you said, one word that really leaped out at me, and that was you received the opportunity.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between, like beating down doors and going after it. I mean, it was just, you received it. Is there anything you wanted to say about that?
Those two things are very closely related.
Yeah.
It's almost as simple as you will not receive if you don't ask. And ask can take a whole bunch of different forms. Ask can be pounding and pounding and pounding, and knock on this door, knock on that door, knock on that door, knock on that door. Keep knocking on doors until one finally opens, or you can just find yourself just beating your head against a wall. So there can be this brute force kind of thing, and if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be, and that's another conversation. But even if it's meant to be, in my experience, if you don't pursue, you will not receive. So this was something that I had to ask for. There was an opportunity out there. I wasn't the only one pursuing it, but I pursued it in such a way that I was selected. And at that point, it was something that was available for me to receive. And so I guess to boil it all down, using the word receive it's a mindset. I did receive it, and that allowed me then to be grateful. I could be filled with gratitude for what I received. Didn't mean I didn't put out effort to go get it. So that's kind of my perspective of what the word means.
No, I love that. I love the message with the receiving and the gratitude. I mean, it's very impactful.
But I guess to differentiate that, I think what the point you were trying to distinguish there was that it wasn't something I went out and took by force.
Right, exactly.
This was something that I had a dream, I set a goal, I put processes in place to pursue that dream and achieve that goal in such a manner that I ultimately did receive what I had decided I wanted to be mine.
But I think the difference is the gratitude, and in the receiving, to me, that implies grace.
Yeah.
The gratitude, the receiving with grace, being very gracious of what, the opportunity that had been given to you, even though you had worked toward it.
Right. In that moment, there was not an ounce of arrogance.
Right.
There was not an ounce of entitlement.
Humility, that's, I think, another word that I'm looking for, because there's a lot of times that you can just say, well, I deserve that. But it was like, what an opportunity, and that sense of humility and gratitude is really very powerful. So I think that's a fantastic message, especially in this day and age. When it's like, I deserve this, I deserve that, and instant gratification. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, and
that's one of what I think your keynotes. I told you.
Oh,
you
yeah.
have in your book, you have keynotes, and I love all the musical analogies, and I love the pictures. They're just great. And conductor's notes. I just thought that was
the
fantastic.
Musical metaphor was, even though I'm not a professional musician, as we talked about before, music is a passion. It's my avocation. My vocation is flying my passengers from point A to point B. My avocation has always been the music, and so I chose that to be the central metaphor of the book. And over the course of the years that it took me to produce that book, we came up with all these different motives, the conductor's notes and the keynotes and the conduct. Yeah. So and in the graphic at the beginning of every chapter is a little piece of sheet music on it.
It was years to create the book, but I'm going to backtrack even years. So we're going back in time
Sure.
a little bit more.
Sure.
And I want you to tell us about the dark days or the dark ages or...
The Dark Ages.
Yeah.
The Dark Ages at the Air Force Academy.
And by the way, thank you for your service. I haven't said that yet.
Well, it was an honor. It was an honor. Thank you for the acknowledgement.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so talk about an exercise in endurance and perseverance and determination. And again, I don't know. I had a very good upbringing in central Georgia in the South. And I don't know specifically what had prepared me for that exercise of endurance. I'd been in youth sports. I'd been in Boy Scouts. I'd been in other extracurricular activities, and just conversations with my dad. My parents, those kinds of things. But something had prepared me, and this desire to succeed at the academy. I was not a good student. I was not a whiz kid at the Air Force Academy. The whole 4 years was a struggle to me. And what you're talking about is the challenge was palpable and demonstrated every single year by the wintertime. At the Air Force Academy, it's situated over 7,000 feet in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains, just snuggled right up against the Rocky Mountains. And the days are short in the wintertime here in Colorado. And it's cold and it's dark and the sun's just barely gone down behind the Rocky Mountains. Actually, I should put it the other way. The sun has just barely risen in the east when it seems to be going down again behind the Rocky Mountains, and the shadows are long, and the nights are just long. So the cadets talk about that being the Dark Ages.
Oh, okay.
Because it literally is dark. The days are so short. The nights are so long. And it metaphorically it works as well because of all the challenges that we deal with at the academy. And I describe it in the book about how you have to march along these white strips and at any moment. Let me talk about my first day at the academy.
That's the one I was thinking of.
So I showed up at the academy and
not knowing what to expect.
Right. So moving into the dorm rooms there, I was a responsible kid. I'd already been to 1 year of college, and we'll talk about that, how I didn't get into the academy the first time I tried.
Okay.
We'll talk about that in a minute. But so I'm at the academy, and first day I'm thinking they're taking away our watches, our clocks, any way to tell time. And so I asked the upper class cadet there who's supervising us, I said, okay, so how am I going to know when to get up in the morning? He said, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. So, okay, no worries, whatever. They had their system. And so I went to bed, went to sleep. And next thing I know, kablam! The door slams open. These guys come running in, yelling at us, telling us how we're already late. And I'm thinking, didn't we talk about this yesterday? What do you mean I'm already late? You just now woke me up. And so this banshee of a cadet comes screaming at me, and that was the beginning of 4 years of dealing with that kind of thing. And so for 4 years, I was met with
that was your wake-up call.
Literally, all of these instances that felt like doors slamming open with screaming banshees coming running in, yelling at me, talking about how I was already late and how I was messing up this way, messing up that way, and just one thing after another. And it's interesting because we tend to think of as doors open, they open to opportunity. But at the academy, it was doors slamming open to these banshees coming in and
the doors to hell. Doors to hell. So doors opening were not a pleasant metaphor for me at the academy until my senior year. Now, I went into the academy not medically qualified to be a pilot. Okay.
My eyes were not good enough. But early in my senior year, somebody at the Pentagon recognized that 7 years down the road, the Air Force was going to be short of pilots in my year group. And so they just changed the rules. And with a stroke of a pen, I became medically qualified to fly. And in an instant, I was on track to become a pilot in the United States Air Force.
Wow. In your senior year.
In my senior year. This was fall of my senior year. Let's go back to that business of not getting in the first time.
Right.
I applied, like everybody does, my senior year of high school to get into the Air Force Academy. For various reasons, I was not accepted. They said that my package was good enough, my scores were good enough, but by the time they got to my package, the class had already been filled. Now, there's another story there. We'll talk about that on another podcast.
Okay.
But they said, hey, go to a year of college. Here's some money. They gave us a little bit of a scholarship to go to a preparatory school in Alabama. And then apply again earlier, and we'll get you processed again and build your scores up a little bit, be that much more competitive. But we think you'll be okay. So I did all that. And rather than entering the class of 1981, which I would have had I gone straight out of high school, I entered with the class of 1982. Now, 3 years later, it was the class of 1982 that were seniors when the policy changed. Not the class of 1981. The only year group that received those waivers was the class of 1982. Only at the academy, not through ROTC, not 1981, not 1983. Had I been in the class of 1981, I would not have been a military pilot. I would not be an airline pilot today.
Wow. So I'm going back to the windshield and the bug.
Right.
Because sometimes, even if you are the bug, you can recover.
Right.
You can resuscitate yourself. You can just...
Yeah. That's an instantaneous metaphor.
Yeah.
That's not a continuing metaphor for life.
Exactly.
So that's an event. So you recover from that event. So when I got that letter from the academy saying, sorry, sport, we're not letting you in this year.
You were devastated.
Devastated. And there's so much that followed from that was the process. I made it sound very simple a minute ago of reapplying. That process was a massive process.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was even more involved than the first time. But I did it. I walked through that process. I stayed in the process. It's like in my book, the central theme of the book, and you see it throughout the book. If we are ever to have success in life, if we are ever to grasp the dreams that we imagine, we simply must stay in the process. And I was prepared to do that. I stayed in the process for another year, reapplied, was in fact accepted in the class of 1982, and then walked through those first 3 years in faith that it was the right thing to do.
Those 3, and that was hell.
Yeah.
You were just going on faith.
Exactly. I to this day, I don't know where I got the intestinal fortitude to do that, whether it was just stubbornness or whether it was just the will to not be defeated. But I was determined not to fail and to make it through that academy without understanding what the ultimate outcome was going to be. And that ultimate outcome was so different. The reward for staying in that process through the second application and then through the 3 years of hell that it took at the military academy, the reward today, here I am, a captain at a major airline, literally living the dream.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, and you and I haven't had this conversation before. My first job, I was 11 years old, was a busboy in a restaurant in Griffin, Georgia.
Oh my goodness.
And from then until now, I have never enjoyed my work the way I do today.
That's amazing.
Never before, I became a captain 2 years ago.
Right.
Never before that was I excited to go to work. My being a co-pilot at this airline for 25 years, it was a great gig. It was a good gig. And being in the military was okay. They put bread on the table, did everything I needed it to do. But today I'm excited. Today I'm excited to be a captain, flying my people the way I do. I would never have done that.
I just want to emphasize too. I mean, you said you're 60.
Right.
Which is, I think, a fabulous age. Of course,
Of
I would
course.
say that.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, how many people at 60 have that kind of enthusiasm and that kind of zest that, oh, yay, I get to go to work today or whatever. And I think that things are changing. I'm talking to a lot of people now that are 60, my age. I'm actually just a few years older than you, just a few.
No, you're not. I'm thinking I'm 60. You'll know what it's like to be 60 soon.
Okay.
Maybe in a few years.
Okay, we'll go with that. But I run into a lot of people who are actually even reinventing themselves at 60 and just a little bit older. So, it's not, 60 isn't what it used to be, is it?
No, not at all. In fact, I was at a networking group yesterday with National Speakers Association, the Colorado branch, and one of the ladies that I met there is 74, and she was talking about exactly this.
Oh, that's wonderful.
She's not ready to be done.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Well, if you have her name, you can give it to me, and I'll have her on the FemiNinja project.
Awesome.
We'll talk.
Yeah, we will. We will. But she was talking about exactly that, about how so many people of our generation are so very productive still. Now, the tragedy for me is that by law, I have to stop flying at 65. Did you know that? A lot of people don't.
I did. I mean, I don't know. I thought it was 62, 65. I knew there was a limit.
Right. So I got 5 years left, and then under current law, I'm done. So I'm going to savor every minute of these next 5 years. They're going to fly by. But that's where we get to the other story is I know it's coming. Right. So I'm in the process now already of preparing my next life, which will be the author speaker thing to a new level.
Right.
I'll use that to replace what I'm doing with the airline.
So again, I'm backtracking just a little bit because I love your perseverance.
Yeah.
That's one thing we talk about in my martial art, where the character of Nin, patience and perseverance.
Awesome.
And, that was a hard lesson for me to learn too. But I do have that incomparable stubbornness. But I think sometimes that people are way too, they give up. They're way too ready to throw in the towel and say, well, this isn't working. And the fact that to hear these stories from someone like you, how many times that you just stayed in the process, you just kind of kept going forward, kept moving, not really knowing what was on the other side. And that trust, that trusting, leap of faith, so to speak, of that you were on the right path, that you weren't going to give up and just keep on going. So if that's one thing the only thing that people can get from this podcast, I think that's so important.
Right. So something I don't know if we're going to get to on this, and we'll get to on another one, but about my bike accident, my bike crash.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm not sure. I wasn't sure if we were going to talk about that or not. But
let me just use that as a quick example. Okay. I won't talk about the whole story. Okay. There's a great story there. There's a whole story.
There is. But it's a great story, but as a recovering physical therapist, I just cringe every time I think about it. And I was a respiratory therapist for almost 20 years, so I worked with a lot of spinal cord injuries, and I cringe when I read that part. I had to go through it very quickly. Yeah.
So we won't go into all the detail, but suffice to say that 7 years ago, I was riding my mountain bike in Moab, Utah, mountain biking mecca, and had a bad crash, broke my neck in 5 places, and I had a battle to fight. And ultimately, obviously, I'm on the radio here. I'm on the podcast. We're sitting here having this conversation. So we got good. Through that. Yeah, thank you. I'm feeling good.
Yeah, you made it down the steps and everything.
I did, yeah. Didn't even have to hold the rail. But the point there is this. That was an opportunity for me to choose to just stop. We talked about this earlier. I don't remember if it was before we started the recording or after, but we as people, we come up with these dreams. And then we create a plan, set goals to achieve the dreams. And if you think big enough, it's a big dream, and it takes big goals and a big process. And it's the thing is, it's never going to be easy. It can be simple without being easy, and it's never a straight line. Fortune is going to throw things in the way that we have to deal with, we have to respond to. We did talk about the space between stimulus and response. Yes. We have the opportunity to respond. But fortune's going to, all of those challenges are going to be opportunities to give up if we want to. whatever it is. Okay, today I'm the bug. Boom. Okay, I'm done. I thought I had a dream. Nah, too much trouble. I don't want to mess with it anymore. Forget it. I'm going to move on to something else. Or we can determine to stay in the process as long as it takes to accomplish the things we want to accomplish, to get where we want to be and grasp that dream. That life is going to give everybody a bike crash. You're going to have a bike crash. Maybe more than one. Yeah. So it's reality. These challenges are inevitable. We know that. The question is, how are we going to respond? And I would encourage people to respond with perseverance, determination. Stay in the process as long as it takes.
That is a wonderful place to wrap things up, and I love those words of wisdom, and you are definitely coming back on the show.
Awesome.
Yes, good, because I wasn't going to take no for an answer. But before...
Were you going to persevere? Were you determined? Were you going to find a way over, under, around, or through my objections?
Oh, let me tell you something. I was blessed with the most incomparable stubbornness. I might not be the smartest person in the world, but I really do believe I'm probably among the top 10 stubborn. But I want you to tell people how they can get a hold of you, because you are starting the speaking career. You do public speaking.
I do.
And you have this beautiful book. So how can people find you? How can they find your website? How can they find the book? And you have a presence on Facebook too.
I do.
You're not under Captaininja, but it's something similar.
No. Yeah. So I'm on all social media under my name, Mark Hardcastle. Find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of that. I know.
No, I'm just having a hot flash.
Oh, okay. I can't help you with that.
No, you can't.
But my website is it's symphonyofyourlife.com. And my email is mark@symphonyofyourlife.com. And I'm going to go out on a limb here, because I know that all of your listeners are classy people and they're not going to abuse this. So I'm going to go out and give you my personal cell phone.
Oh.
And I'm going to say that any of your listeners can reach out to me 24/7. My number is 720-840-8361. Feel free to call anytime. And I can say that because if I'm in crew rest, I turn off my phone. Nobody can get me. Nobody can bother me, but the voicemail is available. So feel free to call anytime. If I don't want to be bothered for whatever reason, I just turn it off and I get voicemails, and I always get back.
That is very generous of you. So
it's a pleasure.
I am telling you, ladies and gentlemen, because I know there are guys that are listening on the FemiNinja Project, do reach out to Mark. He is just an amazing person, so inspirational. I tell you, every time I sit down and talk to you, I learn more, I get more inspired, and I just want to keep on going myself. So you are coming back on the FemiNinja Project,
awesome.
So we will do that. And I'd like to leave it with a little cliffhanger. So if you've liked what you've heard so far, and I'm sure you have, wait until you hear some of the details of Mark's little incident on the bike. But here he is and looking good. So thank you everybody for listening. I really appreciate it. And until next time, bye now. And that's a wrap on another episode of the FemiNinja Project. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.